Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. We're here for a very special mountain episode. Very special episode like we used to have in weekday afternoon specials in the 70s. Very special episode. And I'm testing negative for COVID, so that makes it special.
And also a very special late happy birthday pod to you as well.
Ah, yes. There's that just yesterday.
Just a few days ago, yeah. Whatchamacallit? But, so that's exciting as well. We get that as well. Unfortunately, no real news coming with your birthday, Packers-related
Yeah,
wise.
there should have been some a trade for
TJ Watt on your birthday,
Watt
something like that.
Birthday.
Trade for Trey Hendrickson on your birthday. I mean, there are all these, with the Steelers making that Minkah Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey trades, the Steelers, are they trying to shake things up along the defense? Now, I don't think that's actually happening, but people are talking about it, so I guess we should at least mention
probably
it.
TJ Watt's agent is talking about it. It's like, hey, what's the deal? You're making this trade. You're getting new people. What about my guy?
And I guess they gave Ramsey a raise or something like that as well as part of the trade, so...
I think
gave him
so.
A
they rearranged
deal or something.
They may have
like
restructured
that.
his money, but ended up giving him a raise. And I was like,
he's
why
like,
are you
hello?
doing that?
He's like, that's some of my money that should be going to me. Hello. But anyway,
the Dolphins weren't going to pay him that much money.
Yeah, but there's
why
no
are you
real
giving him a raise and not paying me.
There's no real Packers news going on right now. But so today, what we're going to talk about is, because we've talked a lot about players that maybe we're a little bit worried about regression-wise. We've talked a little bit about, what we think the rookies are going to do. We figured today we'll talk a little bit about some of the other Packers that maybe we're just excited about going into this year. Some players that we feel maybe aren't getting talked about enough because, there are all these players, like everyone always talks about, Matthew Golden, what he's going to bring to the offense, Jaden Reed going into year 3, what he's going to bring to the offense. Is he going to have a bounce back year? Talk about Lucas Van Ness. Is he going to make that step? But it feels like along the way, there are all these players that are kind of getting forgotten. And so we kind of wanted to focus on them in this one. So we each have, I think, 4 players each, 4 to 5. You usually go over. I said 4, but I would not be surprised if you have 5 to 6.
Actually, I was starting off with 3. It's like, yeah, that's enough. I'm recovering from a cold. And then you said 4. And then you immediately took Brenton Cox. I almost had him.
Well, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. But anyway, so we each have 4 players to talk about that we are excited to see what they're going to do in 2025. No guarantees that they're going to have breakout seasons necessarily, but we're excited to see what could happen with them. And so
we weren't supposed to make guarantees?
Oh, we're supposed to put massive amounts of money on the over for all these players. But anyway,
I put the same amount of money I put on every one of these sports bets.
Exactly.
Precisely buckus.
Before we get into any of that, though, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you hear, tell a friend, like, subscribe, leave a comment, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all 3. Follow us on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer for updates on Packers roster moves. Post whenever we have new episodes out, keeping you up to date on the latest. Check out our previous couple of pods if you are interested in where we think the Packers are going to stack up in the NFC North this coming year. I think it's going to be a very strong division, so if you want to check those ones out. And, just a variety of offseason stuff. We're going to be doing an episode a week for the rest of the offseason as we kind of are getting closer and closer to training camp and preseason, which is very exciting. Check us out. Once again, that's at Father Son Packer on Blue Sky. Also, whenever, content from other Packers content creators that we enjoy, any news related stuff, any roster movement, et cetera, coaching hires, one-stop shopping for everything Titletown. But anyway, no real news for us to touch on. Like we said, the closest thing is people putting out TJ Watt jersey swaps. That's the closest thing we're getting to any
the Photoshop jersey swap.
Exactly. We've seen some Photoshops. We've seen some stuff like that. Trey Hendrickson still doesn't have a deal, so I've seen a couple of those. But no real, tangible Packers news. The only thing that maybe we could talk about a little bit is Anthony Belton still hasn't signed his rookie contract yet, which is not unheard of, but there is a large gap between when the last one was signed, which I think was Golden, or maybe it was Savion Williams. It was one of the two of them. And it's been a big gap since then until, whenever Belton signs. So that's still kind of in the wings, but he's participating in all the stuff that so far, and I'm not concerned about it, but we should at least put out there it has not been signed yet. So that's just something to keep an eye on.
I don't worry about this at all. Every year it's the second rounders are always last. They have it is some bit of wiggle room, or the negotiating line is continually moving further and further back in the second round. And so that becomes a fight every year of where that's going to be. So,
yeah, the second round, like, because most of these contracts, if you don't know, are pretty much like set in stone by the like players union. And so like there's not a lot of wiggle room, but second round has like the most wiggle room in terms of how much of that is guaranteed. And so they always take the longest because obviously the agents are trying to get as much as they can for their players, and the teams are trying to, pay as little as they can. So there's always the, tug of war there.
And there's also I'm not going to sign until this guy, like, before we sign, so I know what I should be asking for kind of thing.
Yeah, just, thankfully we're not in a situation like the Bengals. Those are always a sticky situation, so that's always tough. And, hopefully it doesn't turn into anything like that, but I don't think either of us think it will. So let's move on to the players that we're excited about, though. And like I said, we stayed away from rookies because that kind of felt a little bit cheap. It felt like, a little too easy to just pick a rookie. So we're not doing any rookies, and we're not doing any, like, obvious, like, oh, I'm excited to watch Jordan Love this year. I'm excited to watch, like, Jaden Reed this year. Players we've already talked about a lot.
I'm excited to watch Daniel Whelan this year. The low-hanging fruit.
Exactly. The obvious. I'm excited to watch Matt Orzik this year. The easy ones.
Right. The whole operation. Snapper, holder, kicker.
Exactly.
That's the real crux of the team right there.
I will be holding my breath every time they go out there, if that counts.
Just because the stakes are high.
Exactly.
But I feel pretty good about it this year.
But anyway, famous last words. Would you like to start us off with your first player?
All right. I'll jump in. I might be ready to find my spot in the dock. Oh, there we go. So I'm starting on offense, and I'm going with Dontayvion Wicks. This is what I'm getting on the train a year late from everybody else. Talking about how much of a breakout he's going to have last year.
You're buying the dip is what you're doing
right.
on Dontayvion Wicks.
So now I'm ahead of the curve. And so, and one of the reasons is I think this is going to be his year. And let me just go over his last 4 years of both college and the pros, how it's gone for him. In 2021 in college, his passer rating when targeted was a 128.5. And then in 2022, it was a 59.4. In 2023, in the pros as rookie, his passer rating when targeted was 119.9. And then last year, it was 73.6. So we've clearly got an every other year Preston Smith kind of thing going on here. And
I was just about to say, you're calling a Preston Smith shout out where it's like, hey, something's happening every other year where we're just locking in right? once every 2 years.
And it's not, and you can use a lot of different numbers to look at it. I look at wide receiver OPS, which is a way to combine high catch percentage with yards per catch into a baseball-like.
That's Paul Noonan who made that one,
Paul
right?
Noonan who made that. And in 2021, his score in that metric was in the 98.7 percentile. And then in 2022 was 12.2, 2023, 83.5, and 2024, 20th percentile. And his yards per route run, kind of similarly, 96th percentile 2021, 20th percentile 2022, 84th percentile 2023, 59th percentile 2024. So 2025, I mean, gangbusters. And he's still getting open, even though he's had the best year. Like last year was a slight decrease in his target separation. Still 3 yards, which is still in the top half of the league, specifically for wide receivers. You get some funny things, and I didn't do this calculation of yards of separation with depth of target because players like running backs and tight ends who get catches close to line scrimmage,
screens
they have a lot of yards of separation.
Mm-hmm. Guys who are getting lots of screens, lots of checkdowns are always going to have their yards of separation skewed. Do you think he is too open? Do you think he's too good at running routes?
Time to think about it.
It's too much time to think about it for him to catch the ball. Do you
just
need to be? Does he need to get worse?
Don't panic.
Yeah. But that's the thing is it's one of those things that's maybe simple but not easy. The simple thing is if he just caught the ball at an average rate or an above average rate, he'd be dominating. But maybe it's just not that easy,
This is the year it's going to be easy.
I mean, hopefully, because like you mentioned, all of his advanced numbers, yards of separation per target, things like that, they're all good. His route running numbers are always good. The Matt Harmon reception perception charting, it's green at every single route. He's getting open. He's efficient at getting open. He just needs to finish the play.
His run after catch isn't bad either. Even though he's not a speedster,
no, it's not bad.
He's got a lot of wiggle.
Yeah, a lot of wiggle, a lot of suddenness,
juking tacklers.
Which is part of the, I think what makes him such a good route runner is he is very sudden, and he's pretty big too. He's like got decent like frame on him. But yeah, I'm excited for Dontayvion Wicks this year too. I do wonder, like, that's a crowded receiver room. I don't know how much, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, how much patience they're going to be able to have with him in terms of if he comes out of the gate struggling a little bit with, like, you know, Dobbs already there, obviously entrenched as an outside guy, as your X receiver, Golden coming in as a first round pick, Reed being probably your most productive receiver or most dynamic receiver. Like, I guess we'll see with Golden, but your most dynamic established receiver, we'll say. And then Savion Williams, who they're going to give design touches to. And then you bring in McCole Hardman, you have Bo Melton, you have Malik Heath. I think obviously we think Dontayvion Wicks is ahead of those last three, but I do think that there's going to be a battle between him and Savion Williams, and that's not even considering the fact that they want to get Musgrave on the field more, it sounds like, and want to run more 12 personnel stuff. So
yeah, but if you want to talk about how many like boundary receivers they have, actual boundary receivers, that's not so deep.
Well, he's what, third on the depth chart there in terms of outside receivers, third or fourth, depending on how you view Savion Williams. Because I don't think he's ahead of.
I think he's not really a boundary receiver. Right? At least I think they're going to move him around in the formation a lot.
Well, they've said that. I mean, he's not a slot guy. I don't think. I don't view him as a slot receiver. But I mean, he's more.
I think he's going to be a guy they're going to pivot all over, in backfield, in line, move in motion, doing a lot of different things.
I will say, if we were putting rookies on this, I would have put Savion Williams, because I just don't know what they're going to do with him. Because going into the draft, a lot of people were like, you know, a lot. I think it was Dane Brugler said. He said, you know, a lot of teams don't even have him as a receiver on their boards. Like, they have him as like a gadget player only. But then when the Packers drafted him, they were like, no, we view him as a receiver who can do other things. And so it's going to be interesting to see just how they use him. But that does affect Wicks, like you said, like where he stacks up in the depth chart.
Yeah, I think Wicks is going to finish higher in the depth chart. I
hope so. He's an exciting
player.
We'll
see what it looks like in the preseason games, how he's doing. And he has the advantage of he has 2 years left in his contract. He's not in the final year.
That is also true. And we've seen him do it at the NFL level. Like, we've seen him be a dynamic, productive player at the NFL level. And I hope you're right, because if he's high on the depth chart, that kind of just means that he's figured out the hands thing a little bit and like regained that confidence. And if he has that, then like, I mean, shoot, he could be their number one receiver. Like, if he has that. So
he has the potential to get ahead of Dobbs.
Yes, exactly.
That's where I see his potential, and I think he might be getting closer to it this year.
Hopefully. Anything else you want to say on him, or should I go to my first one?
Let's go to your first one.
I have several to go from, but I will start off also on offense, and that is MarShawn Lloyd. I'm very interested in seeing just what he looks like this year, and it's for a variety of reasons. The first of which is he was a pretty high draft pick, all things considered, when you look at where he was drafted for a running back. They take him with a top 100 pick. He was well thought of coming into the draft. You know, Daniel Jeremiah had him as his number one running back. Andy Herman mentioned that, you know, he was the best running back in camp, like before he got hurt. And then unfortunately, you know, he misses almost his entire first season outside of 6 carries, which, like, you're just not going to glean very much from 6 carries. It barely even matters. And his best carry was called back for a hold, I think it was. Like, he had
I was going to say, that was his nicest run, and then it didn't count. And then he got appendicitis. I mean, it's not really like your regular injury stuff that you can't say somebody's injury prone because they got appendicitis.
Yeah, and I mean, he did have a couple different soft tissue injuries, so that's a little bit
some leg injuries,
not ideal.
But I mean, the appendicitis was the last?
Yes.
Well, maybe he had one more injury after that.
But anyway, so we talked a little bit already about, you know, in the lingering questions. Like, so the first thing was he was a very interesting prospect who a lot of people were very high on, and the Packers were clearly very high on with where they drafted him for a running back, and, you know, investing some decent day 2 draft capital into him. And then the second thing is, I just think there's going to be a lot more opportunity for the second running back in the offense this year. You know, we talked about in our lingering questions section that Jacobs is coming off a really big workload with over 300 carries last year. And we talked about, you know, if you want to go check that out, we talked about it. It's like 3 podcasts ago. It's the lingering questions one, but pretty much TLDR, or I guess Too Long Didn't Listen. players who have 300 carries in a season generally follow that season up by being less available. They play median 2.5 games fewer the next season. They are less efficient, 0.56 yards per carry less in the following season after having 300 carries, and then are just less productive, 21.4 yards per game less in the following season. And so I think they're going to have to split the carries a little harder this year to make sure that Jacobs stays fresh and that doesn't happen to him, because he's on that list as well. When he had 300 carries for the Raiders a few years ago, he followed that up with probably his worst season as a pro. So that's like something to keep in mind there. And last year he had 67% of the carries, which is pretty high. Just kind of for reference, the year before Jones was at like 57%, which I imagine is closer to the, general split, although Jones was injured. So that's kind of like clouds that a little bit. But I think it's going to be closer to like the top guy getting like 55%. And so there's going to be more opportunity for those second backs. It's a tough battle for the number 2 spot, I will admit. Emmanuel Wilson has been really good when he got opportunities, and Chris Brooks has his own role where like as the pass protecting back, and he looked good in that role last year, and they clearly like him a lot. But I could see a world where Lloyd ends up as that number 2 guy, and I think that number 2 guy is going to get a lot more work this year than last year. And so I think that that's going to be a really big role in the offense, especially if Jacobs were to miss time.
So here's a question. Rather than have like one big number 2 guy, will there be a number 2 and number 3 guy who split more evenly the work that Jacobs doesn't take?
I think it really depends on what the 53-man roster looks like, in my opinion. Like, do you keep 4 running backs? Because I think the issue is Wilson is good. Wilson's just like flat out good. But Brooks does things that none of the 3 other running backs really do, where he's just a very reliable third down back. Like there were points last season where they were playing him on third down ahead of Jacobs, which like we complained about at the time because we were like, we need more Jacobs on these money downs. But that was definitely a thing last year.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I think one of those was that past Brooks in the low red zone that he didn't haul in. And it was like, why wasn't Jacobs in for that play?
I'm trying to remember which game that was. Was that the Eagles game, or was that?
No, it wasn't the Eagles game. It was later.
Well, I'm sure we'll think of it immediately after we're done recording. It'll just pop into our brains, and we'll have to go back in. I'll go back in and like splice it in there or something.
Splice in
exactly.
like 3 words.
It'll be like a really obnoxious.
You won't even notice.
Obvious.
It'll be really. If we're not saying this now, in fact, the splice is going to be right over what we're saying now.
Yes, perfect. But anyway, so I'm excited for Lloyd though. I think he has he brings a dynamic to the offense that the other guys are more, a little more steady, and not to say they're not explosive, but I think he's the most explosive of the 3.
Yeah, that reminds me, I wanted to say, before we even decided what we were doing this week for the episode, I decided to watch MarShawn Lloyd's.
His 6
I'll say USC,
year?
but it's actually Southern Cal. This is from his last year of college. Like, man, that looks like fun. Those highlights are really nice.
I mean, the thing is, like, which we haven't talked about, is like he did fumble the ball a lot at USC, so let's just hope that's not a thing.
This is true. But he's not going to have this big breakout if he's putting the ball on the turf over and over again.
Exactly. But if he can carry over everything else from college, like, that's a really exciting player. But anyway, that's all I had to say about Lloyd. Who's your next player, Dad?
So my next player, I'm moving over to defense, and I'm going to, maybe it's a different player. I'm kind of excited to see what Quay Walker is going to do this year. He's in some ways, at least so far, in a contract year. They did not pick up his 5th-year option, and they say they want to extend him. We'll see what happens. I mean, of course, we've heard no news about anything. But last year, he was, I think, playing some of the best football of his career, especially from weeks like 7 to 14 before his ankle injury against Seattle in week 15. And I believe this is true, that he was playing his best football of his career, as opposed to what we've been told by the Packers before. Some certain players were playing the best football of their career, which meant nothing to me, because I actually believe it to be true.
Yeah,
it was just like still
the
not
bar
good.
Was low. You're talking about Josh Myers for anyone wondering.
Yeah. And anybody could say, "Well, they're just lying." It's like, no. It's the sad part of it was accurate.
It's actually an insult. Is actually what if you think about it too long.
It was not
it's actually a diss. But anyway, with Walker, I'm excited for him too. It seems like they want to give him an extension. I have a little bit of worry about losing Campanile and what that affects. Like, because, like, hey, all of a sudden you get a new linebacker coach who's like they're super high on and everyone loves, and he gets a DC job the next year. And we've talked about this already, so I won't go on too much about it. But all of a sudden he looks like, hey, maybe that first rounder was a good investment. And then it's like, or maybe, Campanile was really bringing the best out of him.
Maybe
and
we could convince Campanile to come in like one day a week and skip out on his DC job. And
yeah, it's like, you just want to
help us
part-time, some part-time work.
We're in a different conference. It's okay.
We don't even play each other. But no, what I was going to say was it's one of three things. It's either Walker developed, or I guess it's one of four things. Walker had natural development in, this last year, just like as a player who came into the league a little bit raw. So that's possible. Number two is Campanile, the linebacker coach, was instrumental in getting the best play out of him. Number three is, having a new scheme. He plays better in a 4-3 than a 3-4, which is also possible. And number four is playing next to Edgerrin Cooper and having another dynamic linebacker next to him really just helped him play better and helped him be a little bit more active. So it's one of those four. Hopefully it's 1, 3, or 4, but it could be 2.
I'm pretty sure it's Hafley and Edgerrin Cooper are going to be the real reason behind this. And just to go over like what it was like. So by PFF grade from those weeks, 7 through 14, he was the 15th best linebacker in the league in run defense. That's out of 86 qualifiers. 19th best overall on defensive grade. 8th best in tackling grade, which has almost always been good. And 32nd in coverage grade, so still in the top half, and 31st in the total number of stops with 17. If you compare that to 2022 and 2023, he finished in the bottom 25% in defensive grade amongst qualifying linebackers. So it was a big uptick in play, I think. And I'm going to attribute it entirely to Hafley taking over the scheme and getting accustomed to it. And then he was ready to take off. And
I hope
that
so.
will be the pattern from now until the rest of time.
I hope you're right, because, if he can, play like that and then Cooper can take another jump, that's a super dynamic linebacker core, which is just really
it could be
exciting.
A very exciting defense if Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker are both playing well in the middle of the defense with the speed and size to range from sideline to sideline and shut everything down.
Yeah, and I hope that's what happens. My next player in our list is back to the offensive side and also another second-year player, and that's Jordan Morgan. I'm just really intrigued to watch Jordan Morgan this year, and he had a pretty nondescript rookie year, I would say. It's fair to say, and maybe I would say you could make the argument that it was a little disappointing. You'd like a first-round pick to, win a starting job outright. Didn't beat out the incumbent at left tackle or right guard, but I think to be fair to him, when he did play last year, he was okay. He was 57th out of 92 guards who played as many snaps as him in PFF grade, so about average. So you might say, hey, that's like pretty disappointing for like a first-round pick. But at the same time, he was injured for that in pretty much the entire time that he played. He was playing with a shoulder injury. He missed most of training camp with that shoulder injury. And he was playing at a position he had never played before. So he got limited reps over the offseason to train at that position because he was hurt, and he was having to play hurt. And then he missed the end of the season. And so I feel like you can kind of give him a mulligan for last year and just be like, hey, like you played okay at a position you never played and you were playing hurt and you didn't get a lot of reps to train there either. So I'm just curious to see what he looks like healthy. Hopefully he is healthy this year, and where he plays. Because if he can win that left tackle spot, that's like, oh, that's exciting. Like, if he beats out Rashawn Walker for that left tackle spot, that's like, oh, the future is set at that spot. We don't need to worry about what we're going to do contract-wise with Rashawn Walker. And I just think that the ceiling for Morgan is also higher there as like a first-round pick who's a little bit better of a run blocker and profiles as good a pass protector at least. And so you have that cost-controlled tackle there. You don't need to spend a bunch of money at left tackle. And so I just want to see if he could possibly be the future at that position, or if it ends up being at guard, if he can hopefully beat out Ryan at right guard, if he can't beat out Walker at left tackle. And, I'm optimistic. I know his rookie year didn't go as great as maybe anyone hoped it would, but also there are a lot of, extenuating circumstances for that and explanations for that. And so I feel like we can give him a bit of a mulligan there.
If he wins a starting job, that'll be actually pretty exciting to see what's going to happen, especially at tackles. Then he has, counting this year, 4 more years of, salary control.
Yeah. And so I'm interested in seeing him. I just feel like last year, like to judge him off of last year it's almost not even fair. So I want to see what he does this year. I'm excited to watch like what, and I'm not even projecting him to be like a star or anything, but I'm just excited to see what he looks like if he's able to win a job, because that would be a good development for the Packers if he was able to do that. Who's your next player?
I was just gonna say, and I don't just last year. It's hard to put any weight into it really. But then then of course if he wins the job, we'll have to figure out Packers and Rashan Walker will be figuring out what's going on there. But for my next player, I'm sticking to the defense now, and I'm going for interior pass rush. Namely, the guy who I think is the best at it on the team, Devonte Wyatt. Last year, out of 124 interior defensive linemen or D tackles, he was 10th in pass rush win rate, 5th in PFF's pass rush productivity metric, which gives stacks more weight than other pressures, 14th in true pass set pass rush productivity, and by NFL Pro for interior defensive lineman, he was 25th in QB pressure percentage, but only 46th in quick pressure percentage. That's out of 121 players. But like a lot of the Packers, he got better as the year went on. After the bye, he was 4th in pass rush productivity, up from 14th for the whole season, 6th in pass rush win percentage, and 8th in true pass set pass rush win rate. And after the bye, his quick QB pressure rate would have been as good as 26, so it would have moved up like 20 spots. Yeah, so he's getting more quick pressures as well as more pressures overall. So he was, figuring things out, playing healthy for a stretch, though it was nicked up off and on a lot of the season. That's the thing. I think for Wyatt, if he can have a healthy season, I think he has a chance to be one of the game wreckers on this defense.
He just needs to work on his finishing. I feel like he's in the backfield a ton, and then he just is not quite able to get the quarterback down or the running back down.
His pressure to sack ratio was actually pretty good last year. Better, I think, than it was in previous years. So that was actually it might have been like top 10 in the league. I had it written down. I didn't have,
because I would not have thought that. That's interesting. I would not if you could have given me like, was he top 10 in that or bottom 10 in that? I probably would have guessed bottom 10 because it feels like he's just this close to making the play every single time. And maybe I do think in some ways my perception of that is colored a little bit by 2023 when he the lasting image in my mind is Tommy DeVito just running away from him and like he's not quite able to get DeVito down. But that is interesting because I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, he was pressure to sack conversion. Yeah, 7th amongst all interior defensive linemen in 2024 in pressure to sack conversion rate.
Okay, shout out to Devonte Wyatt. It's also kind of a big year for him as well, career-wise, because they put the franchise tag on him, and so it's going to be interesting to see. Do they give him a long-term deal? I think it seems like they want to. Remember, he is also kind of a little bit old for his career seasoning. I think he's already 28 years old, so he's kind of getting up there in age a little bit.
Is it 28 or 27?
He was 24 when he came into the league, and I think he'd be 28. But he's in his late 20s. He's older than you think he would be. But
he's not that much younger than Kenny Clark,
which is hilarious to think about since Kenny was like 19, 20 when he came into the league. So that's
been year 10 now or something like that.
Yeah, that's objectively very funny. But anyway, so. Yeah, I think Wyatt, he's a big part of hopefully fixing this pass rush as well. I think that's like the other thing. It's like the pass rush kind of needs him to be good. It's not just like I'm excited to see him. It's like we kind of need it to happen. We really need him to be impactful unless Kenny takes like a big step back up after, having that off-season foot surgery rather. And he's able to, shoulder more of the load there because otherwise it's like, okay, Wyatt, you're kind of the guy in there. But anyway, anything else you wanted to say on Wyatt though? Because I feel like that's a good choice.
Yeah, I think it's got potential to break out. He's shown a lot of flashes. I think he just needs to get to the point where he's playing more snaps. If he keeps the same level of productivity with a higher snap load, I think he can really have a big impact on the defense this year.
Yeah, and speaking of pass rush, you've kind of previewed the next two for me, which I'll go first with Rashan Gary. And I know this might be a little bit of cheating because he is kind of, a higher paid player on the team. and he's a more big name player on the team. But I do feel like not enough people are really talking about him. It feels like he's kind of the forgotten man. It's like, oh, Gary, a little bit disappointing last year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think people are sleeping on him. He had a pressure rate of 13.4%, which was, top 30 amongst edges in the league last year, which was like, doesn't sound amazing on its face, but that's on par with guys like he had a better pressure rate than Max Crosby. He had a similar pressure rate to Dorrance Armstrong, who had a really good year with Washington last year. So, I mean, his time to pressure also wasn't, maybe as bad as it felt, especially when you're considering like the players he was playing next to. Time to pressure of 2.84 seconds. For reference, Will Anderson was at 2.83, and Myles Garrett was just a couple spots ahead of him at 2.81. So like pretty similar to those guys as well. More quick pressures than maybe you realize, 20 quick pressures, which was top 20 in the league amongst edges. The only negative was he didn't do a great job against double teams and chips. This was an interesting thing that Timo Risk had of PFF. He charted, the grade versus expectation against doubles and chips, and then against, one-on-one matchups. And he was below expectation against doubles and chips, but above expectation in one-on-one matchups. So I think a big thing for him would either, hopefully be improving against those double teams, so he can be more productive in that way, or just them finding more ways to get him one-on-one matchups and just matched up with a tackle, or maybe kick him inside and have him rush against a guard. But I do think that people are not talking about him enough, because I think for as much as we talk about, like another year in the system, that could be a big deal for him as well.
Yeah, if we could get back to the prime Rashan Gary that he had, that half year where he was really wrecking it, that would have a big difference on the team, and then also be like another real impact player on the defense. I think right now we have, maybe you'd say two right now that you can count. You can definitely count on McKinney. Are you ready to count on Edgerrin Cooper? We can get one reliable, impact defensive player on the pass rush. Then we'd have like all three levels have an impact player. That would be make a big difference on basically the defense's ability to get off the field when you really need to, which is the main thing I think we're lacking.
And the counter argument to like the numbers I was giving is like, well, yeah, he was like top 30 in pressure rate. He was top 20 in quick pressures. Like they are paying him to be more like a top 15, top 10 guy.
Yeah.
So, and they kind of need someone on that offense to be that. And like it doesn't necessarily need to be him, but he is the guy that they're kind of paying to be that. And so like that's the counter argument, which I think is fair. But I am still excited to see him this year, because I think that there's more there, and like I feel like he's right there. And so I think another year in the scheme, we all know how hard of a worker he is. Like that's not in question at all. And I'm excited to see him also with maybe a hopefully fully healthy Kenny might also help him be a little bit more productive as well. I think that's on the table as well. But yeah, so I am excited for Gary this year, and I do feel like we're not talking about him enough.
Yeah, and that bit about Kenny Clark being healthy, it seems like for the last 7 years, any time he's dinged up, the whole defense,
whole D-line falls
sinks.
apart. Yep. And so last year, like maybe it wasn't the scheme change. Maybe it was just, hey, Kenny is not able to play like surgery. Kenny, and maybe that's a big piece of it. So who knows? But anyway, that's all I had for Gary. I do think he needs to have a good year as well. But I understand that it's fair to expect more than you got last year, but last year was still like a solid year. It just wasn't spectacular and maybe not quite up to what his contract is.
Yeah, I think a bit of it is expectations, and people want him to be a superstar, and he's been good, but not a superstar.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair, critique. But he was still like, I see people saying like, oh, like he had like a bad year last year. It's like, it wasn't a bad year. It just wasn't necessarily what you would hoped it would be. And I do think he can have he can build on last year and have an even better year this year, I guess is what I hope he can do. And I'm excited to see it. But anyway, who is your next guy?
So I'm going to a different direction here. I'm going to the secondary. I'm going with Carrington Valentine. Talk about a guy I think he was getting slept on or forgotten.
No love at all for Carrington Valentine.
Like, a lot of people, myself included, often have him on the bench at the start of the year in base defense and nickel. But the big thing I think for Valentine is, can he clean up his run D? Out of 127 corners in passer rating against, he was 32nd. For comparison, Nixon was 76th and Hobbs was 72nd. He was 27th in coverage grade per PFF, Nixon 77th and Hobbs 67th. And after the bye, he was even better at 19th. Valentine was 19th in coverage grade and 29th in passer rating against. And he was 7th, this is from NFL Pro now, 7th in EPA per coverage snap when aligned outside. Much better than Nixon at 38th and Hobbs at 35th from NFL Pro. So his coverage has been really good. So that's what, I think can get him on the field, and he might be the best coverage corner we've got. There is a caveat.
Yeah.
And that caveat is he had the 4th lowest run defense grade from PFF on the year amongst all qualifying cornerbacks. So
not Packers corners.
No.
Every corner.
127 quarters. He was, whatever it is, 123rd or 124th. I think he's 4th lowest, not four people worse than him.
And it's not. But the thing is, with him, it's not an effort or attitude issue. He comes downhill like a crazy person. He just doesn't make the tackle, or he can't get off the block because he's not quite strong enough. He's skinny. Yeah,
and if you compare him to who he's competing for outside corner snaps, because he's not a slot corner, Hobbs was 112th out of those corners, out of those 127 corners. So he wasn't much better. Now Keyshawn Nixon, he was 20th best. He was near the top.
I think that's part of the reason that the coaching staff loves Keyshawn, is because they know they can trust him to come downhill and
put his nose in there and be effective.
Yeah.
And Valentine's also had the 17th worst missed tackle rate at 20%. But I got bad news for you. Hobbs was even worse at 22.4% missed tackle rate.
I thought this was supposed to be a positive episode. Why are you're taking this moment to you're bringing Hobbs down so you can pull Valentine up? Why can't we just elevate everyone,
So I'm just hoping that Valentine, I think if he could just clean up a little bit of his tackling, can be a really good player on defense, actually.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great coverage player. And so it's I would
and
love
he's got that cornerback attitude.
Mentality. Yes, it does.
He
does
100%. No
he's
fear,
a talker.
Not going to back down, talk some trash, short memory.
And so that's why it's not a attitude effort thing for the tackling. It's just he's just a little too light to get past blockers or really bring guys down. It's not like he doesn't want to get his nose in there. He's just not good at it. So maybe he can improve at it. But I do think that either way, I think that I would like to see him get reps. I don't want him to be glued to the bench. I would like to see him come in on third downs because he was at least last year the best coverage guy.
Right. So maybe that he and Bullard, because they're not coming in the same position, but because both Hobbs and Nixon can play inside outside, you can bring anybody in and move things around, and that Valentine will be coming in on obvious passing third downs, and Bullard will be in the slot when there's more chance for a run play. And perhaps we should avoid having Valentine cover tight ends.
Yeah. I mean, that's just one of those things where it's it was because the defense was set up correctly. That's what he was coming downhill on Goddard. That should be a tackle most times. But it's just, and it's almost not even fair to he's an NFL player. He should make that tackle. But that is a tough matchup specifically for him with how light he is at corner. And you have a Mack truck of a tight end just throwing you around. And it did feel that was the nail in the coffin for that game, didn't it?
That would hurt, yeah.
Yeah,
it just kept going, and it just kept going on and on and on. It's
I was gonna say,
this play won't end.
It's can I fast forward through this? I know after the third stiff arm, I was I know how this play is gonna end now. It's we can skip to when he's in the end zone at this point. But yeah,
I think there could be good things for Valentine because he's by far the best cover corner.
Or at least he was last year. Yeah.
Well, last year, yeah. So let's say last year, and it wasn't particularly close.
No, it was not. And he has a nose for the ball as well that I'm not sure the rest of the corners do. in terms of being a
please
playmaker as
don't
well.
try to run it out of the end zone
goodness.
after dodging 4 people.
I mean,
just take a touchback, please.
He also fumbled 2 different, interception returns that he just like put on the ground almost immediately. What was the Viking? No, I guess he only fumbled one of them, but he fumbled the Vikings one like immediately after they were like, you need to be more careful, like taking the ball back out, like when you're returning the ball, and then he immediately fumbled the next game. But no, yeah, or 2 games later. But yeah, so yeah, I'm excited for Valentine. I see what you're saying. I worry about just like how he gets on the field, but I hope they still have like use cases for him.
I think this could be a lot of passing downs. Hopefully there'll be a ton of passing downs because we'll be sacking them.
And we'll be up by tons of points, so they'll have to throw. Exactly. That's the hope. Speaking of having to throw and passing down situations, my final player is Brenton Cox. And I just feel like, all this talk about LVN, taking that step up, talk about, Baron Sorrell coming in as a rookie. Brenton Cox has kind of been the forgotten man, and he was just flat out like really good last year. Like
he's already taken that step up.
I was going to say like
he's taking the step that we're still waiting from LVN.
He was way better than LVN has ever been, and he was better than Enagbury last year. And I am just curious to see if like can he move up to that 3rd edge rusher spot? Like with Enagbury maybe having a down year last year and going into the final year of his rookie deal rather. And so he's going to be a free agent next year. I would be very surprised if they brought him back. I don't think that's likely at all. And so, can he beat him out for edge 3? Is there maybe even a world where he beats LVN out for edge 2? Like that's possible as well. And it's just like, can his efficiency scale up to a higher workload? Because he had a 13.7% pressure rate last year. Those numbers are per NFL Pro, by the way. So he had a 13.7% pressure rate last year, which would be kind of like pretty much right on par with Gary's and actually a little bit better. 2.65 seconds to pressure, which is like legitimately elite. Like that's very similar to like Aiden Hutchinson and Trey Hendrickson and Brian Burns numbers. Like he has a similar time to pressure as those guys. His run defense wasn't bad. It was like a slightly above average per PFF, which like obviously is not the end all be all, but he was a little bit above average in run defense per PFF. And the thing is, he only played like 20 to 30 snaps a game and only for 7 games. For reference, like a full-time edge is like around 40 per game. So he played about half the time as like a full-time edge usually does. And so can he scale up that efficiency to a higher workload? Because if he can, it's like maybe he's the answer at edge 2 and you just don't even worry about what you get from LVN. Like that's, I don't know. It's just something to think about.
If LVN was putting up these numbers as a first round
pick,
right?
And
right? Like, this is awesome. And Brenton Cox is doing it, and everybody's like, whatever.
It's like, I don't trust it. But what about LVN though? Yeah, it's like, and that's fair. Like, he was an UDFA, so like that's fair. He doesn't have the pedigree that like an LVN does. I'm just watching on the field. It did feel like in the back half of that year, they're like, hey, like when Brenton Cox is on the field, the defense is a lot better, guys. Like, I don't know what to tell everyone, but LVN's not beating these guys, and Brenton Cox is, so it's like, I don't know what to do.
When Preston Smith got traded last year, the person it opened up snaps for ended up being Brenton Cox.
Yeah, and that was something that, Gutekunst like talked about a little bit, or like that was like a report that was like they're excited to open up snaps by trading Preston Smith, and like Preston Smith also asked for a trade, so there's that as well. But like he was immediately better than Preston Smith had been that year, and he was better than LVN was last year, although like a part-time role, so that's like a fair caveat. And it's like, and Agbury had a bad year last year. Like, I would think that like you go into the year and Brenton Cox should already be ahead of an Agbury in the depth chart, and then you have a competition for that second spot between LVN and Brenton Cox. And like obviously, like you give an Agbury and Sorrell a chance, but like I would say like those two guys are currently ahead of them. But like it does seem like so far it has mostly been LVN in like the OTAs and minicamp that is getting those second reps. But I'm just saying like Brenton Cox was quietly quite good last year, and I feel like we're not talking about him at all this year.
Yeah, I think the Packers seem committed to LVN being edge 2. Now, Brenton Cox, it would make sense, like as a team building strategy, to really test out Cox as the number 3 edge ahead of Enagbury. But I haven't seen enough to know whether that's the case. It may not really be able to tell until preseason games.
Yeah, and I think he's
because
going to have a chance.
if you're bringing in two edge rushers at once, who's 3 and who's 4?
Yeah, exactly. If you're really doing the full platoon, but I would like to see him get a real chance at winning that number 2 spot, but we'll see if that ends up happening in training camp. But I think those were our 8 players. Do you have any guys that you were like thinking about just really quick that you wanted to throw out there that were like honorable mention guys you considered talking about but didn't?
Well, one of them was Brenton Cox.
Yeah, fair enough.
I got beat that. I was thinking a little bit about Bullard was a possibility.
That was one I thought of Bullard as well.
And I was thinking about Rashan Walker.
Yeah, that's fair. He has a lot to prove this year. A lot of money that could be gained or lost this year, depending on if he wins that left tackle spot or keeps that left tackle spot, rather.
Yeah, so those are some of the guys. Who else? Reed gets getting discussed
a lot. Like, obviously, he's an obvious one to me, like, where it's like, Love is obvious, Jacobs is obvious, Reed is obvious, like, and then the rookies are obvious, like, Golden's obvious, McKinney's obvious, like...
I know who else I was thinking about.
Who else were you thinking
Musgrave.
about? I thought about him. I just don't think he's good. I'm sorry to say it.
I was looking back at some of his rookie year numbers. There were some underlying numbers that were actually quite good. Maybe it was yards per route run, or it might have been yards of separation that he was actually measured out very well at in his rookie year. I mean, the sample size isn't big because he missed time there with a lacerated kidney. That was a crazy injury.
Crazy injury.
But so that's a guy who is like totally under the radar right now.
Yeah.
I hope guy so. I almost brought up.
I hope so, but
I still don't think he's as good as Kraft.
He's not as good as
but,
Kraft.
Yeah, he's a potential breakout sleeper.
We'll see. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Father Son Packers podcast. If you like what you heard, subscribe. Whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, tell a friend, leave a comment. Do you agree? Are these players that you foresee having good years? Are these players that you think aren't going to have good years? Let us know. We love talking about Packers with whoever. Follow us on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer for updates when we put new episodes out, content from other Packers content creators, etc., etc., etc. One-stop shopping for everything Titletown. We'll be doing an episode a week for the rest of the offseason, and then once the season kicks up, we'll be doing 2 a week, so tell a friend. But anyway, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.